It is good to be back. It's good to be back with you. I missed our worship assemblies the last 4 weeks. Missed singing and all about it and the communion with you. I appreciate so much all the prayer requests that were sent my way. I enjoyed remembering you in prayer. It was a blessing to me. It was a blessing to me that Connie was with me for the first 8 or 10 days or so, and that Ann came to join me about a week after that, and she was with me for a week, so I wasn't out there for most of the time. But it was a lot of good things, and I'll kind of lay out a few of the things that I took with me from that 4-week break that you gave me, that sabbatical time of rest, off and on over the next few sermons. The thing that I really spent the most time thinking about and reflecting on and reading about and studying about was the implications of the resurrection of Jesus. Now, I believe in the resurrection. I believe Jesus physically. So, what does that mean? What does that imply as far as how we read the entire Bible, how we apply it, and how we live our lives? I spent most of the month thinking about that, reflecting on that, and reading about that, and it was a great blessing. I'm going to share some of those things with you. I think over the next several weeks, I want to talk about how this is all going to turn out. The fancy word for that is eschatology. I'm going to talk about a lot of those things, and I'll start by asking the question this morning: will Jesus return? And it may take me a couple of weeks to provide suggested answers to that question. But I want to start with 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 13 through 18, which is a common text that I often read at gravesides and at funerals because of what it says that's so encouraging. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who've fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. I like the way the King James actually starts that passage, but we would not have you rather search them as our sleep. It seems like it has more pop than the NIV. But there's a lot there. There's a lot there to unpack, and I'm not going to get into all of it this week, and maybe next week we can get into it some more. But it makes me think about where Jesus is now and where God is now and what it's going to mean when it says that he's going to come again, that he's going to come down from heaven with a loud command. Did you ever spend time as a child imagining that you could be invisible? I actually spent some time on that. And, you know, if you could be invisible whenever you wanted, it would be kind of a character test, wouldn't it? You could go anywhere you wanted to. If you had like a cloaking device, you could turn yourself invisible. You could walk into a bank. You could walk into a mall. No one would see you. I remember years ago watching an old black and white movie on television called The Invisible Man. It was based on the book by H.G. Wells, The Invisible Man. And in that book, you know, where accidentally, during a chemical experiment, a man had turned himself invisible, it turned out it was a real struggle for him. He had to wrap his head in rags in order for others to see him. It wasn't a good thing. You couldn't see him, you could see his clothes, you could see the wrappings around his face. And according to H.G. Wells, being invisible is a huge barrier to an enjoyable life. We all want to be seen. We want to be recognized for who we are. We want people to care about who we really are. It's hard to have a relationship with somebody you can't see. Maybe you remember in that movie, Avatar, when those blue people are communicating to express their depth of love and appreciation for one another, they would say, "I see you," which is much more than just a visible appearance, isn't it? They're saying, "I see the real you. I really see you." And that's, I think, what we want. We want for others to see us. When you're with children and they're playing, they want to be seen. With Emily and Jack, and watching them and they're playing, it's not enough for them, for me to just be there, to be present. It's not enough for me to be monitoring their safety. No, what they want me to do is watch them and see everything they're doing and care about what they're doing and really be there for them. That's what every child wants. And if you're not really paying attention, they will do something to get your attention. They want your attention. And I think we all want that. We hate to be ignored. There's that old expression, out of sight, out of mind. And it's a common expression because there's so much truth in it. There's a lot of truth, and it's hard for us as human beings to think about or to relate to somebody that we don't see. Our memories are short, and we forget people that we don't see very often. Facebook has made it possible, I think, to reconnect with people. It has for me, and probably for you. I've been able to reconnect with people I haven't seen their faces in 35 years. But all of a sudden, and I haven't thought about them in at least 25 years, but all of a sudden when their face pops up on my screen, then I find that I'm interested in them. I want to know how they're doing. I hope that they're doing okay, that their family's okay, that their job is going well, and so on. It's funny, someone you haven't thought about in at least a dozen years, suddenly you have interest in because you've seen their face again. I think that's why it's so gratifying to have our missionaries come and visit so we can see them face to face, or to go see them and see them face to face. They're important to us. We care about them and what they're doing, but we can forget about them after a few months when we haven't seen them. And it's a sad thing to be somewhere, but to not have your presence even be acknowledged. And think about what it would feel like to be invisible, to be there but not acknowledged at all. Maybe you felt that way before. Maybe sitting in a school cafeteria with hundreds of other students around you, talking and laughing and enjoying each other's presence, but no one acknowledging your presence. None of your friends are there. You're at your table alone. The rest of the whole room is enjoying fellowship, and you are never so alone as you are in that situation. Maybe you're the weird kid. Maybe you're the smart kid. Maybe even you're like the popular kid, and for whatever reason, you're isolated. I remember feeling sorry for our Student Association president at Abilene Christian University, because he would come into the bean and sit at a table by himself, alone. I guess none of his friends were coming to eat the bean. They probably, I don't know. But he would sit there for about half an hour, eating his lunch, alone at his table, and the whole room is loud, everyone enjoying each other and all your friends and all of that, and enjoying fellowship, and here he is alone. And I'm thinking, I think we all admired him. He would often speak at chapel and others, and we all voted for him, or most of us did. We all admired him, but I'm sure he didn't feel very admired. All these crowds of people around him, no one walking by would even speak to him at his table. An older woman, her husband has been gone for years. Her children live in another city. She's all alone in a silent house that was once full of laughter and love. She goes to the grocery store. Nobody notices her car as she pulls into the lot. Nobody notices as she grabs a cart. She goes up and down the aisles. Other people are going up and down the aisles too. She's selecting her food items. Nobody looks her in the eye. She goes to check out. The woman behind the counter scans each item and puts them in the bag, but never looks her in the eye. No one smiles at her. No one extends a hand. No one really saw her at all. She walks out, she goes out to the car, and she feels invisible. And then I wonder, is that how God feels? I mean, He's everywhere, but you can't see Him. We have passages in the Bible that talk about God like this aspect of Him. For example, we have 1 Timothy chapter 6, and talks about God being the only immortal being. It says in 1 Timothy 6, 15 and 16, God, the blessed and only ruler, the King of kings and Lord of lords, who alone is immortal, and who lives in unapproachable light, whom no one has seen or can see. He's invisible to us. It's hard to know what to make of God's invisibility in Scripture, you know? We're told that no one can see Him and live to tell about it. Yet we have this strange passage in Exodus talks about when Moses asked to see God, he'd gone up on that mountain to speak with God into that brilliant cloud of smoke and fire that conveyed God's presence to His people. And he said he wanted to see God. But God said, no one can see me and live. But I'll put my hand over you, and you hide in the cleft of the rock, and I'll pass by, and after I pass by, I'll pull my hand back, so you can get a glimpse of my glory as I pass. And just to have seen a remnant of the glory of God after he passed caused Moses' face to shine so brilliantly that he had to wear a veil to hide it from the people. So there's something about God that apparently can be seen, but just His glory, this glorious cloud of glory. And who hasn't wished to be able to see God, even if for just a half second, just a moment, to remove all doubt, put all doubts to rest. And God's invisibility creates such a problem for us, and always has, because humans have a hard time believing in something that we can't see. We want something tangible. We want something we can see, and so we've always been drawn to God, but we can't see Him. And so if we can't see God, we'll make a God we can see. Human beings have made representations of God and all kinds of things. Eagles, fish, bulls, you name it. But they turned out to be too small to really be God. They turned out to be easily manipulated. They turned out to be only the projections of our own wishes and desires. And Israel stood alone among all the nations of the world by having an invisible God. They had a temple that represented the closeness of God, and in the holy place, the Holy of Holies, they had the Ark of the Covenant, and on top of the Ark was the mercy seat, and two cherubim on each side had wings stretched out toward the mercy seat. It was the throne of God, but nobody was sitting on the seat. There was nothing there, just empty space. And that was where God dwelt in a special way on the earth. And I'm told that when the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem, tearing the city down stone by stone, they waltzed into the temple, they pulled aside the curtain from the Holy of Holies, and they walked in there, and what do you have? There's no God. And they just laughed. How ridiculous. They worship a God who isn't there. Their God doesn't even exist. We pray to someone we can't see, someone we can't hear, and we can't tell if He's listening. And when we feel the curse of sin and death heavy upon us, God can seem farther than 1,000,000 miles away, out beyond the remotest realms of the universe, somewhere at the edge of the heavens, if He exists at all. But here's a challenge for us. Being invisible does not make God remote. God is not far from us in some remote heaven. He's not far from us, though he is invisible to us. I love the words of Psalm 139. You search me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. The scriptures teach us that God is constantly everywhere in all of his creation. He is not remote. He is near. He's right here. Psalm 29, love the words of Psalm 29. Ascribe to the Lord, you heavenly beings. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. David says, the voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord thunders over the mighty waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is majestic. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks in pieces the cedars of Lebanon. He makes Lebanon leap like a calf, Syrian like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord strikes with flashes of lightning. The voice of the Lord shakes the desert. The Lord shakes the desert of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord twists the oaks and strips the forest bare. And in his temple, all cry, glory! The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord is enthroned as king forever. The Lord gives strength to his people. The Lord blesses the people with peace. David is envisioning, when he thinks of God, he's envisioning a storm in the desert. He's envisioning a storm in the mountains with lightning striking and thunder rolling that picks up giant cedar trees and they pop and they crack. And David says, it's the voice of God. I hear it. I see it. This God is in the midst of his creation. And his temple here in this song is not some building in Jerusalem. It's his whole creation. And the temple is the whole creation. And everything, everyone, including the hills and the mountains, all shout glory in the temple of the Lord. Where is God? He's right here. Paul says to the philosophers in Athens, in Acts 17, he says, the God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man, he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. He is not far from us. In him we about Jesus teaching about the kingdom of heaven. He comes and he's preaching the good news of the kingdom of heaven everywhere he goes. And in Aramaic and in Greek, heaven's there. It's the atmosphere. It's the air. And he's saying, it's at hand. It's close. It's not far. It's at hand. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's right here. Jesus came preaching the good news of the kingdom of heaven to help us understand that heaven is not some far-off, remote location. God is not distant. He's not remote. He's in the midst of the heavens and the earth. It's as close to you as the air around you in which you live and move and have your being. God is as close to you as water is to a fish. Heaven is not a distant physical location within our space-time universe. It's another dimension that runs parallel to our universe. It's unseen, it's invisible, but it's present. The Celtic peoples of the northern British Isles speak of something they call thin places. Have you heard this before? They talk about thin places. Those places on earth where the barrier between heaven and earth is so thin that it's as if it's transparent. And you can feel in these places the very presence of God in the world. And I haven't been there. I've seen pictures. It seems that there are some beautiful, pristine places in the northern British Isles where it almost feels like you're in heaven or by heaven. That it's the thin place. I'm talking about the thin places. Maybe you have some thin places in your world. Maybe there's a chair that you go to have your quiet time or your prayer. Maybe there's a room maybe a sunroom in your house or something. Maybe looking out at your place or whatever where you feel like God is near there. It's a thin place. I think one of the reasons that when I get a sabbatical or I get a trip, I like to go to the mountains. I like to go to the ocean. I like to go to the desert. Because those feel like thin places. I feel like God is close in those places. You see, the problem of God's distance is just a problem of our perception. Every place is, in fact, a thin place. And I can't think there's any more of a thin place than this table right here. And the experience of taking the body and the blood of Jesus, it's as thin as it gets. And when Jesus comes back, it's not going to be a long trip. He's not far. He's here. He's right here. He can feel distant, of course. He can feel distance because of the emotional distance we feel. I mean, it's like when a couple comes into my office and they're having bad relationship problems. And, I have a chair to sit in, and all they can do is basically sit on the couch, which means they can't get very far from each other. I can reach over and touch the other person on the couch. But you can see their body language. I mean, they are 1,000,000 miles apart. They don't see each other. They're intentionally not seeing each other at all. And so it can feel like God is distant, like Jesus is remote, even though he's right here, because of the emotional, spiritual distance we create between us and God. Between us and Jesus. That's the way we are with God when we turn our backs on him in sin. We're not physically distant. We're emotionally detached. We don't see him. But if we draw close to God emotionally and spiritually, he draws close to us. That's the promise in James. It turns out he was right here all the time. And when Jesus ascended, he didn't go very far. He just went into the clouds, and I don't think it was like some Cirrus clouds way up there, or maybe the top of some cumulonimbus at 60,000 feet. He went into the clouds like the cloud of God's glory, like the cloud that was on the Mount of Transfiguration, like the cloud that Moses went into. It was the glory. He went into the cloud, and then we don't see him anymore. He stepped across that thin barrier into the heavens. The two men, or the angels dressed in white in his tomb, said, "Why are you looking around for him? He'll come back the same way he left." And if you think about it, Jesus is right here, as close to you as the air you're breathing. Would you think about it? It kind of makes it rude for you to go all day without saying a word to him. Certainly, if you think about the fact that Jesus is right here, that you've invited him to dwell in your heart, means that there are some places and things you should not do. Because Jesus is there too. I think the distance between God and us, the distance between Jesus and us, is the one that we create. And we can choose to uncreate it. And if we draw close to him, he draws close to us, and the barrier is gone. And when Jesus returns, he is going to appear, and, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but Paul says we're going to be caught up together with him in the cloud. And we'll be with him forever. And that thin barrier between us and God, between us and Jesus, will be taken away. No more thin barrier. And we'll be with God forever, and we'll see him face to face.